Lack of affordable housing is forcing more Americans to live out of their cars. A recent study found the number of people residing in their vehicles surged by 46% over the past year.
Millions of Americans are still going to work every day, but they're sleeping in cars at night. This isn't addiction. This isn't laziness. This is what happens when rent, fines, and towing punish people faster than paychecks can save them. And in 2026, it's getting worse. In 2026, having a job no longer protects people from homelessness. The core problem is simple math. Median rents in many U.S. metro areas now exceed $1,900 to $2,400 per month, while median take-home pay for service, retail, warehouse, healthcare support, and logistics workers often falls between $2,400 to $3,000 monthly after taxes. That leaves little or nothing after rent alone. Financial experts still recommend housing costs stay under 30% of income, yet millions are now paying 50 to 70%, making housing mathematically unsustainable. One missed paycheck caused by illness, reduced hours, or layoffs immediately creates arrears. Late fees compound fast, often $100 to $300 per month, pushing tenants further behind. By the time eviction filings begin, many households are already $3,000 to $6,000 underwater. Eviction records then block future rentals, even for people who remain employed. Unlike past recessions, this crisis is happening without mass unemployment first. People are working full-time, sometimes multiple jobs, yet still cannot meet basic housing costs. The disconnect between wages and housing didn't happen overnight. It built quietly through stagnant wage growth, aggressive rent hikes, and shrinking affordable housing stock. This is why car living has become a fallback. When income can't stretch to rent, but can still cover fuel, insurance, and food, vehicles become the last controllable expense. Housing didn't fail because people stopped working. Housing failed because work stopped paying enough to live. The path from housed to homeless has compressed dramatically. In previous decades, it often took years of instability. In 2026, it can happen in 30 to 90 days. A single event, job schedule cuts, medical bills averaging $2,000 to $5,000, or rent increases of 10 to 25% is often enough to collapse a household's finances completely. Once rent falls behind, eviction timelines move fast. In many states, landlords can file eviction notices after just 5 to 14 days of non-payment. Court dates follow quickly, and once a judgment is issued, tenants may have only 72 hours to vacate. There is rarely time to secure new housing, especially with damaged credit or eviction records that follow them for 7 years. At this point, most people don't go directly to the streets. They move into vehicles because it preserves mobility, employment, and some dignity. Cars allow people to keep working, keep children in school, and avoid shelters. But this transition is rarely planned. People sleep in parking lots, rest areas, industrial zones, or residential streets, often rotating locations nightly to avoid enforcement. What makes this collapse faster than ever is the absence of buffers. Savings rates for working Americans are near historic lows, with nearly 60% unable to cover a $1,000 emergency. Without emergency housing options or rent relief, the slide from apartment to car happens quietly and quickly, often before friends or family even realize what's happening to their loved ones. This crisis is not limited to expensive coastal cities. From 2020 to 2026, average U.S. rents increased by 30 to 50%, while wage growth for most workers rose only 15 to 20%. In many so-called affordable cities, rents jumped faster than in major metros due to migration patterns, investor buying, and limited housing supply. For example, a unit renting for $1,200 in 2020 now rents for $1,800 or more, while wages in the same area may have increased only $2 to $3 per hour. That gap alone represents an extra $7,000 to $9,000 per year, money most workers simply don't have. Compounding this is the loss of smaller, entry-level units. Studio apartments and single-room rentals have been converted into luxury units or short-term rentals. This removes the lowest rung of housing entirely. Waiting lists for subsidized housing often stretch 3 to 10 years, making them completely irrelevant during a crisis. Rent increases also trigger hidden costs, including higher security deposits, stricter income requirements often demanding 3 times the monthly rent, and higher application fees that can reach $50 to $100 per application. A worker earning $45,000 annually may be blocked from renting a $600 apartment despite being able to pay it historically. The result is a national affordability collapse affecting over 20 million renter households. Car living becomes not a choice, but a consequence of housing costs rising faster than the economy can absorb. Once someone begins living in a car, fines become a major destabilizing force. Many cities prohibit overnight parking, sleeping in vehicles, or staying longer than posted limits. Citations often range from $50 to $250 per safe violation, and they accumulate fast, sometimes nightly in enforcement-heavy areas. For workers living in vehicles, fines aren't just financial, they create cascading damage. Unpaid tickets lead to late penalties adding 25 to 50% more, registration holds, or license suspensions. A suspended license can mean lost employment, especially for delivery drivers, caregivers, tradespeople, and logistics workers who depend on driving for income. Some cities aggressively ticket specific neighborhoods, forcing car dwellers to move constantly. This sleep disruption reduces job performance and increases stress-related health issues. Studies show chronic sleep deprivation can reduce cognitive performance by 20 to 30%, directly affecting employment stability and decision-making ability. What makes fines especially destructive is timing. They hit when people have the least financial margin. A $150 ticket can be the difference between buying food, fuel, or paying insurance. Missed insurance payments. Risk policy cancellation, which then exposes drivers to even larger fines reaching $500 to $1,000. These penalties are rarely framed as homelessness enforcement, but that's exactly what they become. Instead of providing safe parking or transitional support, cities extract money from people who already cannot afford housing. This turns temporary car living into long-term homelessness through debt accumulation rather than recovery. Vehicle towing is one of the most devastating moments for people living in cars. Tow fees typically range from $300 to $700 upfront, with daily storage fees of $50 to $100. Within just 5 to 7 days, total costs can exceed $1,000 to $2,500. An impossible sum for someone already struggling. When a car is towed, shelter and transportation disappear simultaneously. Many workers lose access to their jobs within 24 to 48 hours, especially in areas without public transit. Missed shifts quickly lead to termination, turning a housing crisis into full unemployment. Once a vehicle is impounded, recovery becomes statistically unlikely. People often lack the cash, documentation, or time to reclaim it. After 30 days, vehicles may be auctioned or scrapped, permanently removing a person's ability to work, store belongings, or sleep safely. This is why towing is often the final step into street homelessness. Without a vehicle, people move into tents, shelters, or completely unsheltered conditions. Recovery becomes dramatically harder, with fewer job options and higher exposure to health and safety risks. Towing is not a neutral policy tool. It acts as a trapdoor. While framed as traffic enforcement, it functionally strips people of the last asset keeping them housed enough to work. Once the car is gone, the chances of escaping homelessness drop sharply, often permanently. Studies show that vehicle loss reduces housing recovery rates by over 60% compared to those who retain transportation. For many workers, car living looks cheaper on paper. Monthly, rent of $1,800 to $2,400 disappears, replaced by fuel, insurance, and basic food costs. In reality, the risks are extreme. Exposure to heat and cold is one of the biggest threats. Interior car temperatures can exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit in summer and drop below freezing in winter, increasing the risk of heat stroke, hypothermia, and respiratory illness. Safety is another major concern. People living in vehicles are far more vulnerable to theft, assault, and harassment. According to homelessness advocacy data, vehicle dwellers experience violent crime at rates 3 to 4 times higher than housed populations, yet rarely report incidents due to fear of police interaction. Health problems escalate quickly. Lack of consistent sleep increases the risk of heart disease by 20 to 30%, weakens immune systems, and worsens existing medical conditions. Basic needs, showering, using restrooms, preparing food, become daily logistical challenges, often requiring long drives and extra fuel costs. Car living also damages vehicles faster. Engines idle more, batteries fail sooner, and maintenance is often delayed due to lack of funds. A single repair costing $800 to $1,200 can end car living instantly. What appears cheaper is actually fragile. Car living works only until something goes wrong, and something always does. The danger isn't just discomfort. It's how quickly a manageable situation turns into a medical emergency, job loss, or permanent homelessness affecting over 2 million Americans currently living in vehicles. In 2026, many cities spend more money managing homelessness than ending it. Enforcement budgets for policing, cleanup crews, and surveillance often reach tens of millions annually, while permanent housing programs remain underfunded or stalled. Some major cities spend $50,000 to $80,000 per homeless person annually on enforcement, far exceeding the cost of permanent supportive housing. Encampment sweeps, parking enforcement, and vehicle citations are framed as public safety measures. In practice, they displace people without offering alternatives. When a camp or vehicle area is cleared, people don't disappear. They move a few blocks away, often losing belongings, documents, medications, and work equipment during cleanups. Cities frequently justify enforcement by citing complaints or sanitation concerns, yet fail to provide adequate bathrooms, trash services, or safe parking zones. This creates a cycle where conditions worsen, triggering more enforcement spending. Temporary programs dominate policy responses. Motel vouchers, short-term shelters, and emergency aid typically last 30 to 90 days, far shorter than the 6 to 12 months needed to secure housing in a market with extreme shortages. Once assistance expires, people are pushed back into vehicles or onto the streets. The system prioritizes visibility reduction over stability. Reducing the appearance of homelessness becomes the goal, not reducing homelessness itself. This approach costs more over time, increases trauma, and makes long-term recovery less likely. Enforcement doesn't solve homelessness. It spreads it thinner, deeper, and harder to escape. In many areas, actions necessary to stay alive are increasingly illegal. Sleeping in vehicles, resting in public spaces, or parking overnight can result in citations or arrest. By 2026, over 100 cities expanded ordinances banning vehicle dwelling or restricting it to limited zones. These laws disproportionately affect workers. Someone finishing a late shift may have nowhere legal to sleep. A single citation can escalate into warrants, court fees averaging $200 to $500, and criminal records, further limiting housing and job options. Criminalization creates a permanent paper trail. Even minor infractions can appear in background checks for 7 to 10 years, blocking employment in healthcare, education, logistics, and security sectors. What begins as a survival decision ends as long-term exclusion from the workforce. The financial burden compounds quickly. Court fees, missed work days costing $100 to $300 in lost wages, and legal costs add hundreds or thousands of dollars in debt. For people already living paycheck to paycheck, this debt is unpayable. Most importantly, criminalization discourages people from seeking help. Fear of arrest keeps individuals away from outreach workers, medical services, and support programs. Instead of stabilizing lives, the system drives people further underground. When survival is treated as a crime, homelessness stops being a temporary condition and becomes a permanent status enforced by law. Currently, over 30% of homeless individuals have pending legal cases related to survival activities, creating barriers that can last for years. Contrary to popular belief, many people living in cars are eligible for shelters, but choose not to use them. Shelters often separate families by gender or age, making them impractical for parents, couples, or caregivers. Others prohibit pets, which many people rely on for emotional support and protection. Safety is a major concern. Overcrowding, theft, and violence are frequently reported inside shelters. For workers trying to maintain employment, the risk of losing belongings valued at $500 to $2,000 or missing sleep is too high. Rules can also conflict with work schedules. Curfews requiring entry by 6 to 8 p.m., mandatory check-ins, and early wake-up times at 5 to 6 a.m. make it difficult to hold night shifts, rotating schedules, or multiple jobs. Missing a shelter deadline can mean losing a bed entirely. Shelters are rarely designed for long-term recovery. Stays are often limited to 30 to 90 days, after which people must leave regardless of housing availability. This creates constant instability rather than progress. Cars offer autonomy. People can choose where to sleep, protect their belongings, and maintain routines compatible with work requirements. For many, vehicles feel safer than crowded facilities averaging 50 to 200 people per location. Avoiding shelters isn't a rejection of help. It's a rational response to systems that don't fit the reality of working homelessness. Approximately 40% of vehicle dwellers have previously used shelters but chose cars as a more stable alternative. Living without stable shelter rewires how the brain functions. Constant vigilance, watching for police, theft, weather, or towing, keeps the nervous system in a permanent stress response. Cortisol levels remain elevated 2 to 3 times higher than normal, increasing anxiety, depression, and burnout. Sleep deprivation is one of the most damaging factors. Studies show that chronic sleep loss impairs judgment, memory, and emotional regulation at levels comparable to alcohol. Intoxication at 0.05 to 0.08 blood alcohol content. This makes job performance harder and decision-making less effective, even for highly capable individuals. Isolation compounds the damage. Shame and stigma cause many car dwellers to hide their situation from coworkers, friends, and family. Social support erodes, increasing loneliness and hopelessness. Mental health struggles often begin after homelessness, not before. The instability itself triggers panic disorders, affecting 40 to 60% of homeless individuals, PTSD symptoms, and depressive episodes. Without access to consistent care, these conditions worsen over time. This mental toll explains why escaping homelessness becomes harder the longer it lasts. The problem isn't motivation, it's neurological exhaustion. Homelessness isn't just a housing crisis, it's a mental health crisis created by instability, fear, and constant survival pressure. Research shows that every 6 months of homelessness increases the likelihood of chronic mental health conditions by 25%, making early intervention critical but often unavailable. By 2026, homelessness is no longer concentrated among single adults. Families with children and seniors on fixed incomes are increasingly forced into vehicles. Housing data shows that nearly 1 in 4 homeless individuals now lives in a family unit, and the fastest-growing homeless demographic is adults over 55, increasing by 48% since 2020. For seniors, the math is brutal. Average Social Security benefits hover around $1,800 per month, while rents in many regions exceed that amount alone. Even seniors who own vehicles outright are pushed into car living after rent increases of 15 to 25%, medical costs averaging $400 to $800 monthly, or the death of a spouse. Families face different pressures. Childcare costs averaging $800 to $1,200 per child per month can consume an entire paycheck. When rent jumps or hours are cut, eviction follows quickly. Living in a car allows parents to keep children in school temporarily, but stability erodes fast. Children living in vehicles experience higher rates of developmental delays, anxiety, and academic disruption. School districts report increasing numbers of doubled-up or vehicle-living students who remain invisible in official homelessness counts, estimated at over 1.5 million nationally. This shift matters because systems were not designed for these populations. Shelters, outreach programs, and emergency aid overwhelmingly target single adults. As families and seniors enter car homelessness, the system's mismatch becomes impossible to ignore. Car living is often described as a way to save up for housing. In reality, very few people escape homelessness this way. Basic survival costs eat away any potential savings. Fuel alone can exceed $250 to $400 per month, especially when constant relocation is required to avoid enforcement. Food costs increase without refrigeration or cooking access. Eating out or buying prepackaged food often costs 30 to 50% more than preparing meals at home. Gym memberships or truck stop showers add another $30 to $100 per month just to maintain hygiene necessary for employment. Vehicle maintenance becomes unavoidable. Tires, brakes, batteries, and oil. Changes fail faster when cars are used as living spaces 24 hours daily. A single repair averaging $600 to $1,200 can erase months of savings instantly. Meanwhile, fines, tickets, and administrative fees accumulate unpredictably. Missed insurance payments risk cancellation, while reinstatement fees can reach $500 or more. Most importantly, income instability increases. Sleep disruption, illness, and stress lead to missed shifts or reduced productivity. Even small income losses of $200 to $500 monthly prevent progress. Car living doesn't generate savings, it consumes resources. Without external support or systemic change, the idea of just saving your way out becomes unrealistic for most people. Studies show that less than 8% of vehicle dwellers successfully save enough to transition back into stable housing without additional assistance. The tipping point for many people is not eviction, it's enforcement. A single parking ticket can trigger a chain reaction. Unpaid fines escalate by 25 to 50% with late penalties. Licenses are suspended after $500 to $1,000 in unpaid tickets, and vehicles become eligible for towing. Once a tow occurs, recovery becomes statistically unlikely. Tow fees of $300 to $700, plus storage costs of $50 to $100 per day, quickly exceed $1,000 to $2,000 within 2 weeks. For workers living paycheck to paycheck, this is impossible to pay. Without a vehicle, people lose transportation to work, storage for belongings, and shelter. Job loss often follows within 2 to 5 days. What began as a housing crisis becomes total financial collapse. Even when people manage to retrieve their vehicles, the debt remains. Payment plans stretch for 6 to 12 months, siphoning income that could have gone toward housing. This process functions as a homelessness trap. Enforcement doesn't just punish, it removes the tools needed to recover. Studies show that people who lose their vehicles are 60 to 70% less likely to regain stable housing within 12 months compared to those who retain them. The system treats vehicles as violations rather than lifelines. Once that lifeline is cut, the chances of escape drop sharply. National data shows that only 15% of people who lose their vehicles to towing recover housing within 2 years, compared to 45% who keep their transportation. Official homelessness statistics severely underrepresent car dwellers. Most counts rely on shelter usage or visible encampments. People sleeping in vehicles, rotating parking spots, or staying out of sight are often excluded from counts, potentially missing 2 to 3 million individuals. Point-in-time counts are typically conducted once per year, often during winter, and rely on volunteers scanning limited areas over 24 to 48 hours. If someone moves locations nightly, they are easy to miss. School systems, hospitals, and employers often identify car living informally, but this data rarely feeds into official counts. As a result, millions remain statistically invisible. Undercounting matters because funding decisions rely on these numbers. Fewer counted homeless individuals means less federal and state funding for housing, outreach, and services. Current estimates suggest official counts capture only 30 to 40% of actual vehicle dwellers. This invisibility also shapes public perception. Car dwellers are framed as rare or temporary, rather than as a growing segment of the working poor representing potentially 15 to 20% of all homeless individuals. When people aren't counted, they aren't planned for. The crisis appears smaller than it is, delaying meaningful responses and allowing conditions to worsen unchecked. Some metropolitan areas have seen documented increases of 40 to 60% in vehicle living since 2020, yet official counts show increases of only 10 to 15%. Several forces converged by 2026. Housing supply failed to keep pace with population growth, creating a shortage of 3 to 5 million affordable units nationwide. Zoning restrictions limited multi-unit development, while investor purchases reduced available rentals by 15 to 25% in some markets. At the same time, pandemic-era protections ended. Eviction moratoriums expired in 2021 to 2022, rent relief programs closed, and emergency benefits disappeared. People who were barely surviving lost their last safety nets. Cities also shifted policy. Safe parking programs remained limited to 10 to 20 cities nationwide, while enforcement expanded. Towing, fines, and parking bans increased by 30 to 50% without corresponding housing investment. Inflation compounded the damage, higher food costs increasing 20 to 30%, fuel prices rising 40 to 60% from 2020 levels, and insurance costs jumping 25 to 40% reduced disposable income, leaving no margin for rent increases. These changes didn't happen independently. Together, they created a system where falling into homelessness became easier and escaping became harder than ever before. The result is a crisis affecting over 580,000 people on any given night, according to official counts, though actual numbers likely exceed 1.5 to 2 million when vehicle dwellers are included. Without intervention, projections suggest these numbers could double by 2030. The growth of car homelessness is not driven by individual failure, it's driven by structural imbalance. Housing costs exceed wages by 40 to 60% in most markets. Enforcement replaces support, and recovery pathways are blocked. As more people enter homelessness, systems become overwhelmed. Shelters fill to 95 to 100% capacity, wait lists grow to 2 to 5 years, and assistance becomes harder to access. This slows recovery and increases long-term homelessness. Children growing up unstable face lifelong disadvantages, including 40 to 50% higher dropout rates. Seniors lose health and mobility at accelerated rates. Workers burn out. These outcomes create higher public costs in healthcare, emergency services, and policing, estimated at $35,000 to $50,000 per person annually. Without affordable housing expansion, wage alignment, and non-punitive policies, car homelessness will continue to rise. The system is currently designed to manage homelessness, not prevent it. Until stability becomes cheaper than enforcement, this crisis will not reverse. It will normalize. Current trajectories suggest that by 2030, vehicle dwelling could affect 3 to 4% of American workers, transforming what was once an emergency into a permanent feature of low-wage employment. Prevention costs far less than management. Permanent supportive housing averages $15,000 to $25,000 annually, less than half of enforcement costs, yet receives only 20 to 30% of funding allocated to homelessness response. This crisis doesn't end on its own. It spreads quietly, one paycheck at a time.
With the holidays coming up, some people are in the spirit of giving.
But there is a group of panhandlers targeting some areas who may not be as needy as you think.
Now, these people stand at shopping malls with small children, holding signs asking for money.
Right now in America, more than 1.5 million laid-off workers are sleeping in places nobody should ever call home. RVs, old minivans, grocery store parking lots, and even abandoned highway exits. These aren't drifters or wanderers. They're parents, nurses, truck drivers, warehouse workers, people who had jobs, homes, and stability just months ago. But as layoffs explode and rents climb into the stratosphere, millions are discovering the brutal truth. In today's America, one lost paycheck can send you straight into the streets. America faces an unprecedented crisis, massive job losses happening alongside skyrocketing housing costs. Since 2024, economic trackers estimate 1.5 million workers lost their positions. Tech giants like Amazon, Google, and Meta cut tens of thousands of employees. Major retailers including Walmart, Macy's, Kohl's, and Best Buy closed stores and trimmed staff. The trucking industry saw thousands of company shutdowns as freight demand collapsed. Meanwhile, housing costs continue climbing. Average U.S. rent now sits between $1,800 and $2,100 monthly. Cities like San Diego, Denver, and Seattle push single-bedroom apartments to $2,500 to $3,000, with vacancy rates getting tighter. When households lose income, rent becomes impossible. Experts estimate one missed paycheck puts half of American renters at immediate eviction risk. Over 60% of households live one paycheck from homelessness. Today's layoffs don't create inconvenience. They trigger immediate crisis within 30 to 60 days. When jobs vanish, shelter vanishes. Wage growth slowed to 3 to 4%, while housing jumped 6 to 12%, creating an impossible gap. Americans now face a brutal choice: homelessness or alternative shelter. This explains why RVs, cars, and parking lots have become housing solutions. Traditional shelter has become mathematically unattainable for millions of working families who suddenly lost income in an economy where basic survival requires more money than most Americans earn. This isn't a single industry recession. Every major economic sector is cutting jobs simultaneously, creating a devastating chain reaction. Tech layoffs dominate headlines, with tens of thousands eliminated from Meta, Salesforce, Microsoft, Stripe, and Google since 2024. But the real danger lies in sectors regular Americans depend on. Retail saw over 3,000 stores announce closures across Walgreens, CVS, Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, Target, Rite Aid, and former Bed Bath & Beyond locations. Manufacturing slowed automotive and appliance production, eliminating tens of thousands more in 2025. Freight experienced catastrophic collapse. Over 40 major trucking companies shut down, forcing 20,000 to 40,000 drivers into unemployment. Healthcare facilities facing financial pressure laid off nurses, support staff, and specialists. Construction slowed as mortgage rates climbed to 7 to 8%, halting projects and cutting jobs. There's no soft landing because essential costs remain sky high. Average households need $74,000 yearly just to survive. while median wages sit around $59,000. With each falling domino, retail, freight, tech, manufacturing, available jobs shrink. Laid-off workers aren't bouncing into new positions like 2019 or 2021. Instead, millions fall off the map entirely. They're pushed into RVs, vans, SUVs, and parking lots because the economy no longer accommodates them. The job market contracted while living costs exploded, creating perfect conditions for mass displacement into vehicle dwelling. Buying an RV traditionally meant vacation and retirement. In 2026, it transformed into America's emergency shelter system. Unofficial, unrecognized, and completely unprepared. Used RV sales exploded during the pandemic. By 2023, approximately 11 million households owned RVs. Today, these vehicles serve a different purpose: emergency housing for families locked out of rental markets. More alarming is car dwelling. Estimates suggest 500,000 Trasentiu. 700,000 people sleep in sedans, SUVs, vans, and pickup trucks. Cars are easier to acquire than trailers. The change appears everywhere. Parking lots filled with overnight residents, parents using gym memberships for showers, workers heating food with camp stoves outside vehicles, RV camps overflowing and turning desperate families away. RVs and cars now represent the last stop before street homelessness, but they carry real costs. Used travel trailers need propane, insurance, fuel, and repairs. A broken alternator or blown tire can eliminate shelter overnight. Without intervention, America creates a mobile homeless class. Not by choice, but by economic force. RVs and parking lots became cheaper and more accessible than rent, revealing a housing system that failed millions. This isn't lifestyle choice or adventure. It's survival strategy for families priced out of traditional housing who still need shelter. The transformation from recreation vehicle to permanent residence shows how desperate America's housing crisis has become for ordinary working families. America's most shocking trend: overnight vehicle villages behind big box stores. Walmart, Cracker Barrel, Cabela's, and Bass Pro Shop traditionally welcomed RV travelers for overnight parking. Now they've become unofficial homeless shelters. Why there? They're safe, well-lit, patrolled, and free. Many stores allow one-night parking, but desperate families stretch that definition, staying 3 days, a week, sometimes longer. Walk behind a Walmart at 2 a.m. and witness families with kids doing homework inside minivans, camp stoves heating soup beside car doors, RVs with solar panels taped to roofs, older workers living alone because retirement savings vanished. This isn't localized. States seeing the most parking lot living include California, Arizona, Texas, Nevada, Florida, Colorado, and Washington. Food insecurity connects directly. Many stores report record theft spikes, not from crime rings, but from hungry families trying to eat. For millions forced from housing, parking lots become final refuge, places to sleep without harassment, rent, or eviction notices. But as more locations ban overnight stays due to rising safety concerns, families have fewer legal places to exist, pushing them deeper into danger. Parking lot living reveals systemic failure. These spaces weren't designed for residential use, yet they're functioning as America's largest unregulated shelter network. The corporate parking lot became housing infrastructure by accident, filling gaps government and markets left wide open for displaced working families seeking anywhere safe to sleep. RV parks used to beg travelers for reservations. Not anymore. Many regions show RV parks operating at nearly 100% occupancy with record waitlists. The reason? Millions using RV parks as long-term housing, not vacation destinations. But parks weren't designed for permanent residents. To manage surging demand, many implemented strict limits, 7-day maximum stays, 30-day turnover rules, no monthly rentals, proof of income requirements, no older RVs allowed. Some parks require background checks, turning away families with old evictions or credit issues. The result? Thousands pushed out with nowhere else to go. Average monthly RV pad rental jumped from $450 to $900 or more. Popular areas, Florida, Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Texas, now price out the very people needing them most. When campgrounds fill, families turn to rest areas, forest land, casino parking, abandoned lots, and highway shoulders. This pipeline, layoffs, eviction, RV park, rejection, parking lots, became the new American housing map. Every campground tightening rules forces more people into less safe, more exposed living conditions. The campground crisis reveals another layer. Even alternative housing options are collapsing under demand. RV parks can't absorb displacement from traditional housing markets. Parks designed for weekend, travelers now face permanent residents they can't legally or financially support, creating another bottleneck where desperate families get rejected and pushed toward increasingly dangerous, unregulated spaces with zero services or protections. When someone loses their job today, the fallout isn't just unemployment, it's financial collapse on multiple fronts simultaneously. First comes lost paycheck. In 2025 to 2026, over 60% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency, meaning any layoff instantly becomes housing crisis. Within 30 to 60 days, missed rent triggers eviction notices. Landlords file record removals, thousands monthly. Eviction filings remain 30 to 40% above pre-pandemic averages in states like Arizona, Texas, Florida, and Nevada. But eviction doesn't just mean losing a roof. It destroys ability to find another. Single evictions stay on record for 7 years. Landlords often require 3 times monthly rent and income, clean rental history, credit scores above 650, security deposits up to $3,600. Add maxed-out credit cards, rising interest rates near 28 to 33% APR for many lower-income borrowers, and the picture becomes grim. This creates downward spiral. Layoff leads to unpaid bills destroy credit, destroyed credit blocks apartments, no apartment means vehicle living. Millions of Americans fall into this sequence simultaneously. By reaching RV parks or parking lots, they're not just houseless. They're financially locked out entirely, unable to qualify for traditional housing, even if they find work again. The simultaneous collapse of income, housing, and creditworthiness creates a trap with no exit. Once all three fall, recovery becomes nearly impossible under current systems designed to exclude anyone with financial disruptions on their record. One of the most misunderstood pieces of this crisis, many living in RVs and cars aren't unemployed. They're working. Researchers estimate 30 to 40% of America's vehicle dwellers have jobs, but jobs don't pay enough to rent or own homes in today's economy. Walk into a Planet Fitness at 6 a.m. and witness the quiet survival routine. People brushing teeth in bathrooms, workers showering before shifts, uniforms stuffed in gym bags, charging stations powering phones and laptops. Some workers make minimum wage, around $12 to $16 hourly, depending on state laws. That equals $1,900 to $2,600 monthly before taxes, nowhere near enough to cover rent, $1,800 to $2,500. Car payments, $400 to $700, insurance and food. Others are gig workers, DoorDash, Amazon Flex, Walmart Spark, but fluctuating demand and high fuel costs often erase profits. Then there are retail, warehouse, and healthcare aides, earning slightly more but still unable to secure stable housing due to high upfront costs and low supply. This group hides in plain sight. They're your restaurant servers, delivery drivers, casino workers, substitute teachers, people participating in the economy but shut out of housing. Their existence exposes brutal truth. Having a job in America no longer guarantees access to home. Work no longer equals shelter. The fundamental social contract broke. Full-time employment once meant basic housing access. Now it means parking lot, sleeping between shifts for hundreds of thousands of Americans still contributing labor but receiving inadequate compensation. As more people turn to RVs and vehicles for shelter, cities respond, not with help, but with crackdowns. Over the last 3 years, over 100 cities and counties passed ordinances restricting overnight parking, vehicle dwelling, or long-term RV stays. Common new restrictions include no overnight parking anywhere within city limits, tow-away zones near schools, parks, and shopping centers, 72-hour limits on any vehicle parked in public space, $300 to $750 parking fines, police towing RVs and auctioning them as abandoned. Cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Austin expanded enforcement zones, targeting areas where vehicle residents traditionally cluster. Municipalities argue crackdowns reduce crime and sanitation issues, but reality devastates. When an RV gets towed, families lose homes, clothing, documents, and medicine in one hit. Recovery fees often exceed $1,200 to $2,500, meaning most never retrieve belongings. With parks and parking lots shrinking, families get pushed into more hidden and more dangerous areas: remote industrial zones, unlit back roads, abandoned lots, behind warehouses. By criminalizing where people sleep, cities aren't solving homelessness. They're shrinking the map of where human beings can exist. Enforcement doesn't eliminate homelessness. It disperses it into shadows. Every towed RV represents a family losing everything. Every restricted parking zone pushes vulnerable people toward locations with zero safety, services, or oversight. The crackdown approach prioritizes appearance over human welfare, creating invisible populations living in increasingly desperate conditions. There's a myth online that living in an RV is a cheap alternative to housing. But when families are forced into vehicles without savings, the opposite becomes true. RV life becomes financially brutal. Consider average base costs: RV park or campsite, $600 to $900 monthly; propane for heat and cooking, $80 to $200 monthly; fuel costs, $250 to $600 monthly; dumping freshwater and waste, $20 to $50 weekly; insurance and registration, $120 to $200 monthly. That assumes nothing breaks. One unexpected failure wipes out everything. Tire replacement, $250 to $400 each; brake job, $600 to $900; alternator, $800 or more; transmission, $3,000 to $7,000, often RV ending. For many living in older RVs purchased cheaply, often 15 to 25 years old, breakdowns are common. Unlike rental apartments, there's no maintenance person to call. Even car living has costs: gas to stay warm overnight, gym memberships to shower fast, food bills due to lack of kitchen access. While social media glamorizes #RV life with solar panels and campfires, reality for laid-off families is grim. They're spending nearly the same as rent just to survive, and one repair can push them from vehicle living onto streets. The cost myth keeps people unprepared. RV dwelling isn't cheaper, it's just different expenses with higher risk. One major breakdown eliminates shelter entirely, unlike traditional housing where broken appliances don't mean instant homelessness. Vehicle dwelling transfers all maintenance risk and costs directly onto people least able to absorb them. Perhaps the most heartbreaking trend: families forced to separate for survival. When households lose income and can't afford rent, tough decisions follow fast. Some parents send children to stay with relatives while they sleep in cars or RVs. Others split households. One adult couch surfs while the other watches the RV in parking lots. In cities like Phoenix, Las Vegas, Portland, and Houston, nonprofit shelters report requests for temporary housing for minors increased 20 to 35%, while adult shelters remain full. Even grandparents' homes are overcrowded. Estimates suggest multi-generational housing is at its highest point in modern U.S. history, with over 60 million Americans now living in combined households. Families often keep separation secret, from schools, employers, even neighbors, fearing custody loss or social services intervention. Some school districts report surging numbers of students classified as housing insecure, many doubling up or living in cars but still attending class. This fracturing isn't just emotional, it's systemic. It shows an economy where the safety net shredded so thin that parents can't keep children under the same roof. When layoffs force families to split apart to survive the month, you know a country reached its breaking point. Family separation reveals the deepest crisis layer. Economic systems aren't just failing individuals, they're breaking family units apart. Children separated from parents due to housing costs represents fundamental social breakdown, not individual failure, but collective policy catastrophe. Not everyone can bounce back from layoffs, and the crisis brutally affects older Americans and disabled workers. Workers over age 55 face the longest re-employment times in the U.S., often 6 to 12 months or more finding another job. Worse, Social Security isn't designed to catch them. Average benefit is only $107 monthly, far below rent needed in almost every U.S. city. Many seniors burned through savings during the pandemic era, and nearly 40% of Americans near retirement have less than $25,000 saved. Those with medical issues face impossible equations. Medication, food, and rent cannot all be paid without income. America now has fast-growing senior RV and car dwellers, especially in warm weather states like Arizona, Texas, and Florida. Many rely on food, banks, church parking lots, or $25 nightly campgrounds, which still adds up to $750 or more monthly, money they don't have. For disabled Americans, numbers are worse. SSDI average payment, $1,137 monthly. Required income for basic rental, $1,800 or more. Prescription price inflation, 12 to 18% yearly increases. Many cannot work at all, but are still priced out of traditional housing. This portion represents silent emergency. People who worked entire lives now sleep in backs of cars because the system was never designed to protect them when housing becomes luxury good rather than human necessity. Vulnerable populations face compounded disadvantage with no recovery pathway available under current support structures. America doesn't just have a housing crisis, it has a vehicle housing foreclosure crisis experts didn't see coming. During boom years of 2020 to 2022, millions financed RVs with cheap interest rates. Today, those loans became traps. Repossession filings on RVs began, rising sharply in 2024 and are now estimated up 60 to 80% nationwide, depending on region. Unlike homes, RVs depreciate instantly, many losing 30 to 50% of value in just a few years. Someone who bought a $45,000 travel trailer may now owe $38,000 on a rig worth $18,000 to $22,000. Meaning they're underwater and cannot sell. If income disappears and the loan isn't paid, the bank takes the RV, which means borrowers lose shelter, belongings, transportation, and stability. Creditors sometimes still demand remaining balance, even after repossession. Even paid-off rigs aren't safe. States like California and Oregon are towing unregistered RVs parked on city streets and auctioning them. Single unpaid registration fee or expired tag can trigger a tow, and most working poor households cannot afford retrieval costs. This means thousands are being evicted twice, first from rental homes, then from the RVs that replace them. Vehicle repossession used to be financial setback. In 2026, it often means instant street homelessness. The repossession crisis reveals another trap. Even alternative shelter isn't secure. Financed RVs become debt anchors that can be seized, eliminating shelter while leaving debt behind. The foreclosure pipeline now includes vehicles serving as primary residences. A disturbing new pattern emerges across America. Micro-cities built from cars, vans, and tents, usually tucked just beyond what drivers can see. These communities grow rapidly near highway exits, industrial zones, and forest edges. Why highways? They offer access to food, access to jobs, easy relocation, and less police patrol. Estimates from local outreach groups suggest 80,000 to 120,000 people may now live in these clustered vehicle encampments, not by choice but by economic necessity. Many of these hubs function like communities: campfires for cooking, shared tools and water jugs, rotating watch shifts for safety, parents homeschooling children from phones, informal trade, and bartering systems. Cities try removing these encampments, but every sweep simply relocates people a few miles away. In some regions, encampments grow back within weeks, often larger than before. The scariest trend is expansion into rural areas where there are no shelters, no services, and no food pantries. As housing becomes unreachable and RV parks close doors, the crisis spreads outside city limits, creating a shadow America, visible only if you drive slowly down the right dirt road. These camps are warnings. A modern, wealthy nation now has thousands of hidden, unregulated villages of working people with no permanent address. The encampment phenomenon shows organized survival emerging from systemic failure. People create informal communities because formal systems abandon them. These highway villages represent America's failure to provide basic shelter, forcing citizens to build parallel survival infrastructure outside legal frameworks or government support completely. Some Americans aren't staying put. They're chasing work across the country in RVs, vans, and cars. This group includes former warehouse employees, truckers, Amazon workers, restaurant staff, and gig drivers. They travel from state to state hoping to find seasonal or temporary work. Roofing in summer, holiday retail rush in winter, farm harvests in fall. But without stable housing, this nomadic lifestyle becomes financially brutal. Fuel alone can eat earnings. Average gas cost for traveling household, $400 to $800 monthly. Diesel rigs can spend $1,000 or more monthly. Temporary jobs rarely offer stability. No benefits, no paid time off, no guarantee of hours, layoffs at any moment. Even Amazon Camper Force, once a lifeline for RV users, slashed capacity and wages, leaving many stranded after driving hundreds of miles. Every state change also means new challenges: insurance rate increases, vehicle inspection fees, new overnight parking laws, unknown tow and homelessness enforcement. This mobile workforce represents a new American class. People still working but unable to plant roots anywhere due to rising costs and unstable wages. As more cities ban vehicle dwelling and job competition intensifies, thousands may soon find there's nowhere left to go. The nomadic workforce exposes labor market failure. Workers must chase temporary jobs across entire states while absorbing all relocation costs with no stability or benefits. Economic necessity created modern migrant workers, not agricultural laborers crossing borders, but American citizens crossing state lines seeking any work that might cover basic survival costs for another few weeks. Living in a vehicle may offer shelter, but it offers very little safety, especially for women, disabled individuals, and single parents. Police records and community reports show increases in break-ins targeting RVs and vans, theft of catalytic converters, batteries, propane tanks, assaults at night, predatory behavior toward women alone. Families living in parking lots are exposed at all times. Unlike apartments, there are no locks between danger and sleeping space beyond thin doors or metal skin. Many RV owners must rotate locations every night to avoid being targeted. Some sleep with knives, pepper spray, or makeshift alarms, while others stay awake in shifts. Kids growing up in these environments face extreme stress. School counselors in multiple states report rising numbers of students with PTSD-like symptoms, lack of sleep, development delays linked to instability. For women especially, danger is staggering. Advocacy groups estimate 1 in 4 vehicle-housed women experience harassment or threats, and many avoid shelters for fear of assault there too. This crisis isn't only about economics. It's about safety, survival, and dignity. Once housing disappears, people don't just lose walls and roofs, they lose privacy, protection, and the right to feel safe in their own lives. The safety crisis reveals housing's protective function beyond basic shelter. Walls provide security, privacy, and defensive space. Vehicle dwelling eliminates these protections, leaving vulnerable populations exposed to predation, theft, and violence with minimal recourse. Women and children face amplified danger in environments where personal security depends entirely on constant vigilance without structural protection. The most frightening aspect of this crisis isn't where we are, it's where we're heading. For the first time in modern history, America appears to be normalizing vehicle homelessness. With 1.5 million or more layoffs, soaring housing costs, and shrinking safety nets, the pipeline is predictable. Layoff leads to eviction, eviction to vehicle, vehicle to street, street to disappearance from official statistics. Federal homelessness counts show all-time highs, but experts warn real numbers may be double because people in cars often aren't tracked. Meanwhile, housing construction lags by 3 to 5 million units, and wages still trail inflation. If nothing changes, no mass housing build, no living wage reform, no enforcement relief, the number of people living in vehicles could surpass 2 million within 2 years. Unlike past downturns, this crisis isn't temporary. It's structural. Jobs are more unstable. Housing is more expensive. Credit is harder to rebuild. America silently creates a nomadic survival class, families, workers, retirees, all without homes, rooted only to the parking spot they can find before dark. This isn't fringe issue anymore. It's a warning sign of a nation under strain, where everyday people fall through cracks, and the ground beneath them gets thinner every month. The normalization represents systemic acceptance of failure. When vehicle homelessness becomes expected rather than shocking, society stopped demanding solutions. The crisis transitions from emergency to permanent condition, with millions trapped in survival mode while policymakers treat displacement as inevitable rather than solvable. Because at the end of the day, nobody is coming to fix this unless we talk about it. Click the next video to see how cracking down on RV homelessness is actually making the problem worse. Drop a comment below. Have you seen RV or vehicle camps growing where you live? And before you leave, subscribe, because this story isn't ending, and neither are we.